this task we pray for enlightenment, that our minds may be attuned to your will and to the voice of those whom we serve. For wisdom, that we may discern wisely what decisions to make and what actions to take, and what will serve best the interests of our countrymen. For courage, that we may do what is right even in the face of opposition, that we may say what must be heard even in the face of criticism. Above all, we pray for sobriety and selflessness, that all our deliberations in this hall of the people may be tempered by reason, guided by a clear understanding of what our country needs, and fueled only by our collective passion for the mission that now rests on our shoulders. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Trilon.
19 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. Before we proceed any further, with the permission of the chamber, the chair suspends our session for 1 minute to enable all of us to greet our colleague, Senator Grace Poe, a happy birthday. Session is suspended for 1 minute.
Come in.
So,
Well, 5-10 minutes. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 15th session, September 2, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? Hearing none. The reading of the journal of Tuesday, September 2, 2014 is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby adopted and approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized on the question of public interest.
A minute suspension, Mr. President, while the PowerPoint presentation is
Suspended for 1 minute.
ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I proceed, Mr. President, allow me to acknowledge the presence of some friends from the Philippine Society of Orphan Disorders. Juan Benedito Magdaraog, who has Pompe disease. He's the gentleman in the wheelchair. Joaida Ziv Morejon. She has blue rubber bleb nervous syndrome. Pauline Martinez, Gotchman disease. Angelo Marco maple syrup urine disease. We also have their parents and family with them, and of course Dr. Carmencita Padilla, who has been at the forefront in assisting them, including the diagnosis and seeking cure for their treatment. Mr. President, social media has become a remarkable tool for spreading information and raising awareness, because in the past few weeks alone, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge has gone viral over social media to promote awareness and encourage donations to ALS research. Many prominent personalities have participated in the challenge, no less than our Senate President Drilon, Senator Bongbong Marcos, Senator Bam Aquino, and Senator Sani Angara, who actually nominated me last week. I would like to congratulate all my colleagues and the others who have participated and supported this noble campaign. I would like to respond to Senator Sani Angara's nomination through this speech. Why through this speech? Why am I responding on the Senate floor? Allow me to take you back 10 years ago, even before I became a senator. In 2004, at the end of the 12th Congress, Congress passed the Newborn Screening Act. This law is able to identify, through this law, we are able to identify and reverse the complications of a number of rare diseases. And because of this law, Filipinos who would otherwise be disabled for life or die an early death are now able to live normal lives. Fast forward to today. Mr. President, prior to the Ice Bucket Challenge, few people knew of ALS and its devastating effects. I take this opportunity to point out that ALS forms part of the 48 rare diseases in the Philippines, of which we know very little about. In fact, many more remain undiagnosed. ALS is a motor neuron disease that affects the nerve cells in the brain and the spinal cord. Motor neurons send signals from the brain to the different muscles of the body in order to control voluntary muscle activity, such as speaking, walking, or swallowing. ALS causes a progressive degeneration of motor neurons, which means that the brain loses its ability to control muscle movement. When the muscles stop receiving signals from the brain they need in order to function, the muscles begin to atrophy or become smaller. During the early stages of ALS, symptoms include increasing muscle weakness, especially affecting the arms and legs, speech and swallowing or breathing. In the latter stages, patients with ALS may become completely paralyzed. Although 10% of cases are linked to genetics, there is no known cause for ALS. Further, despite the development of riluzole, a drug that slows the progress of ALS, there is still no cure or treatment that halts or reverses this disease. Early this year, I filed Senate Bill number 2098, or the Rare Disease Bill, which seeks to provide access to medical treatment and drugs for persons with rare diseases. Rare diseases do not discriminate who they affect. In order to adequately address a health issue, research and data gathering are very important. To this end, Senate Bill number 2098 mandates the following: identification of persons with rare diseases and creation of a rare disease registry. Section 5 of Senate Bill number 2098 provides for the identification of persons with rare diseases and the creation of a rare disease registry, and that healthcare practitioners and health institutions are required to report diagnosed cases of rare diseases to the Rare Disease Registry of the Department of Health and provide reports on the status of patient. Section 6 further provides for the referral of patients suspected or diagnosed with rare diseases to the regional newborn screening centers to ensure that the afflicted persons receive adequate medical care for his or her condition and is referred to a healthcare practitioner who specializes in rare diseases. Under Section 8 and 9 of the bill, persons with rare diseases shall enjoy the same benefits as persons with disabilities as mandated by RA number 7277 or the Magna Carta for Disabled Persons. Under Section 19, the Department of Health shall ensure that a system is in place to facilitate the qualification of an afflicted person as a beneficiary of medical management services of a rare disease. Thus, treatment of a rare disease shall be included in the benefit package to be provided in the guidelines set by the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. Further, revenues generated by RA 10351 or the Sin Tax Reform Act shall include medical assistance to patients with rare disease. Mr. President, heightened awareness about rare diseases as well as diagnosis and accessible treatment are crucial if we are serious about helping persons with rare diseases. Families caring for a family member with a rare disease have no fighting chance if they do not have access to quality and affordable medical care. It is my hope that the attention given to ALS can somehow carry over to other rare ailments and that more work and research may be undertaken to diagnose and manage these rare diseases. Mr. President, my child had trisomy 13, a condition that can be likened to a rare disease. I know treatment for such conditions is expensive. I know sometimes there is no cure, but like any mother, like any parent who has gone through this experience, we live by hope. Every day, the hope for a cure, the hope for a breakthrough, even the hope for temporary relief. Let us be part of that hope. And this is my response to the Ice Bucket Challenge, not just to broaden awareness for ALS and the other rare diseases that affect the Filipinos and people all over the world, but for the allocation of funding for health care. We passed the Sin Tax law that provides for budget for universal health care, attainment of the Millennium Development Goals and health awareness programs, as well as for medical assistance and health enhancement facilities programs. But until today, I am still awaiting the response from the Department of Health as to how these funds have been allocated, which I believe should include funds to deal with these rare diseases. Thus, as Vice Chair of the Committee on Health and with the permission of our Chair, Senator Gingona, I plan to hear the Senate Bill number 2098 in the hope of truly improving the quality of life of patients with rare diseases and their families, and to help alleviate the burden of finding appropriate medical care to manage the illnesses. To Senator Angara, who nominated me, if we go to Geneva together for the Interparliamentary Union, with no less than the Senate President as our witness, I will jump in Lake Geneva if you will join me. That is my counter challenge. Thank you. May I just put on record the websites for more information? It's www.psod.org.ph and www.fightpompey.com. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano.
Sir
The
President.
Majority Leader.
Sir President, I move that we refer the speech to the Committee on Health and Demography.
So referred.
Mr. President, I now move that we recognize the chairman of the Committee on Health to deliver a speech, to speak on a matter of personal and collective privilege, Senator T.G. Gingona.
Senator Gingona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. A humanitarian issues that has always been prevalent in the country is internal displacement. In a nutshell, internal displacement refers to involuntary movement or forced evacuation of persons within their country's borders who flee their homes, mainly because of man-made or natural calamities, armed conflicts, and the like. Internal displacement is a serious social problem that needs to be addressed, as it results in the loss of lives and properties, psychological trauma, family disintegration, disruption in education, loss of employment, as well as increase the risk of human trafficking, sexual and gender-based violence, child exploitation, and the like. Internal displacement is undeniably a common phenomenon in the Philippines. According to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, the combined impact of internal armed conflict and natural hazards placed the Philippines among the top 12 countries with the new highest displacement figures in 2013. The UNCHR has monitored the state of internal displacement in Mindanao over time and noted that recurring typhoons and the Zamboanga armed conflict in September 2013 contributed to the rise of IDPs in the country. It also contributed to homelessness, Mr. President. It is the most palpable and glaring consequence of internal displacement. And like every enterprising Filipino who sees every challenge as an opportunity, a group of groundbreaking designers have taken up the cudgels for the homeless by creating what we call, Mr. President, the Butterfly House. Businessman and founder of the Butterfly, P.H. Rogelio Von Santos Jr., and the Bujilayog plus Royal Pineda firm teamed up to create a design solution to homelessness. And this is called the Butterfly House. The Butterfly House is a human-centered innovation which aims to serve as affordable, habitable, durable, and convenient emergency shelters for internally displaced families. It is a new, innovative, steel-framed housing structure that can be folded for compact shipping and storage and unfolded into an immediately livable structure. The traditional response to the occurrences of internal displacement is for government to build interim tent cities or bunk houses, which in some cases are inadequate, of substandard quality, uninhabitable, expensive, and mired with corruption. The Butter House project, on the other hand, is a private sector initiative utilizing a design approach to provide a corruption-proof housing solution to the homelessness by providing strict quality control, thereby ensuring that each Butterfly House is a product of integrity. As author of the Philippine Design Competitiveness Act of 2013, I am proud of this design. The Butterfly House proves that the traditional notion of design goes beyond mere aesthetics. Ultimately, it is a problem-solving mechanism which leads to the improvement and quality of human life. I would like to invite all of you to see for yourselves why the government should support this worthwhile endeavor.
Designed and manufactured as a compact and portable system, The butterfly housing system deploys in minutes, even by people with no construction experience. It is a steel frame shelter that requires less time and manpower than the construction of other temporary shelters such as bunkhouses, while providing more longevity, durability, and protection than a tent. The butterfly system is easily deployed to a site and then quickly unfolded with minimal effort into an immediately livable structure. With an off-grid solar energy panel and built-in LED lights, the butterfly system is capable of providing 8 to 15 hours of basic lighting. As shown by the recent calamities that left millions of people displaced in desperate need of shelter, governments and international aid are now faced with a financial and logistical nightmare when it comes to providing immediate shelter. However, constructing new shelters on site as a response to these disasters are labor and time intensive, taking days and even weeks to complete a single structure. In these cases, meeting demand can take up to months or even years to reach most of the people that are in need. Tents are the first to be deployed as a quick response solution, but experience shows that they often end up being used beyond the intended time period, resulting in dilapidated tent city settlements. In such cases, sanitary conditions and security are compromised, leaving women, children, and the elderly susceptible to illness and vulnerable to predatory activity. The butterfly system has been specifically engineered for portability with dimensions designed to fit multiple housing units into a single shipping container. The housing system is also designed for rapid deployment as a temporary shelter or a highly durable steel frame permanent home. The butterfly system comes in 3 configurations. Number 1, as a single unit freestanding shelter providing 11 square meters of basic living space. Number 2, as a single unit with added bathroom. And number 3, as a full family configuration providing 25 square meters of living space with bathroom. The system can easily be returned to its original shipping configuration with minimal effort for easy storage and deployment to other disaster sites in the future. Since the Philippines experiences over 20 typhoons a year and periodic earthquakes, it is prudent to have a solution that can be redeployed quickly to house those in need, providing the security, stability, comfort, and general safeguard from sickness. The butterfly system eliminates the possibility of providing housing built below specifications, and because it was designed and developed in the Philippines, it was specifically made with affordability in mind. The butterfly house system can be used in a number of other applications for consumer, commercial, and government use, such as medical facilities, off-site offices, on-site command centers, and recreational use. In short, the butterfly system can fit any application requiring a low-cost, portable, configurable, rapidly deployable shelter with the unique quality of becoming a permanent home solution.
Like a butterfly that spreads its wings, this butterfly house gives hope to thousands of internally displaced persons by restoring to them their dignity. On behalf of the Senate institution, I would like to congratulate and commend inventor Rogelio Von Santos Jr., designer Buji Layog, architect Royal Pineda, David Layog, Jennifer Saberon, architect Onet Coronel, Michael de Guzman, for this exceptional Filipino innovation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we refer the speech to the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement.
So referred.
And on a personal note, Mr. President, maybe we can encourage Senator Gingona to also furnish our housing authorities, the DPWH, and also our disaster rehabilitation authorities with his privileged speech and video. On that note, Mr. President, may we acknowledge inventor Rogelio Von Santos Jr., architect Royal Pineda, David Layug, Jennifer Saberon, architect Onet Coronel, and Michael de Guzman, who are also here in the Senate. May I ask them to rise to be recognized?
Let the presence of our visitors be made of record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, also here at the Senate today, Mayor Len Alonte, the City of Binyang.
Mayor Alonte is recognized and his presence is made of record.
Vice Mayor Arman Dimagila and the members of the Sangguniang Panlunsod of Binyang are also here today.
The presence of our visitors are made of record and they're welcome to the Senate.
May we also welcome students of the College of Office Administration from our hometown of Pateros, the Pateros Technological College, Pateros, Metro Manila, headed by Mr. Rolando Bailon.
The students of Pateros Technological College are welcome to the Senate. The group is headed by Mr. Rolando Bailon. Your presence is being made of record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 843.
Any objection? Consideration of the proposed Senate Resolution 843 is in order.
May I request the Secretary to read the title and the text of the said measure?
Secretary is directed to do so.
Resolution congratulating and commending Filipino junior golfers Army Nicole Constantino, Carl Jano Corpus, Anaiga, Chanel Pineda Cayabyab, Andrew Chua, and the rest of the Philippine contingent for emerging victorious in the 2014 Veritas World Junior International Golf Tournament at the Brookside Golf Club in Pasadena, California on July 1924 to 2014.
Sir President, I move that we approve proposed resolution number 843, subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution 843 is hereby adopted, subject to style.
Sir President, may I request that all senators be made co-authors of the said measure?
The co-authorship of all the senators present is being made of record.
Mr. President, aside from the people that we are honoring in the resolution, may we also acknowledge the presence and extend our congratulations to Mr. Luigi Tabuena, President, Junior Golf Foundation of the Philippines, Ms. Hazel Novero, Administrator, Tournament Coordinator, Junior Golf Foundation of the Philippines, and Police Chief Superintendent Richard Albano, District Director of the QCPD.
The presence of our visitors are made of record.
May I ask for a few minutes suspension, Mr. President, to allow the senators to congratulate the awardees and for a photo opportunity with the Senate President.
Session suspended. One.
Sir, akit ikot sila ron. Yung golfers mo.
What's your name?
Wala. Wait. Excuse me. Sige, tira ka na lang.
Where's my majority leader? Huh? Saan? Okay.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we tackle resolution number 861, may we welcome to the Senate Federico Moreno, Jose Miguel Moreno, Sheila Moreno, Jaime Rafael Moreno, Violeta Soriano Jovillo, Enrique Magdayaw, Vina Morales, Shaina Magdayaw, Paing Nupuneseno, and of course, Mr. President, walang tulugan kay Herman Moreno. May we welcome them to the Senate and acknowledge
Mr.
their
Herman Moreno and our other guests are welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, with consent of the Senate, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 861, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 871.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of proposed Senate Resolution 861 is in order.
May we request the Secretary to read the title and text of the said measure.
Secretary is directed to do so.
PS Resolution 861, resolution congratulating and commending Filipino junior archer Gabriel Luis Moreno for winning the country's first gold medal in the second Youth Olympic Games on 24 August 2014 in Nanjing, People's Republic of China. Whereas the Philippine Senate has on several occasions paid tribute to outstanding Filipino athletes for their astonishing feats, such as becoming champions in international competitions, thereby bringing pride and glory to the country. Whereas 16-year-old Filipino archer Gabriel Luis Moreno made the country proud when he delivered the country's first Olympic gold medal in the second Youth Olympic Games in Nanjing, People's Republic of China on 24 August 2014. Whereas Gabriel Luis Moreno, who teamed up with Chinese archer Li Jiaman in the mixed international team archery against archers Muhammad Soklipili of Malaysia and Cynthia Freiwald of Germany, thereby clinching the gold medal victory with a score of 38-37, 37-35, 37-33. Whereas junior archer Gabriel Luis Moreno holds the distinction of being the first Filipino gold medalist in the Youth Olympic Games. Whereas by winning in this international competition, Gabriel Luis Moreno has made our country proud and has shown the world the country's prospects for excellence and international dominance in the sport of archery. Whereas this outstanding performance by a Filipino archer, junior archer, deserves to be commended for the honor and recognition it has brought our country. Now be it resolved, as it is hereby resolved, that the Senate of the Philippines congratulates and commends Filipino junior golfer archer Gabriel Luis Moreno for winning the country's first gold medal in the second Youth Olympic Games on 24 August 2014 in Nanjing, People's Republic of China. Adopted, Manalito M. Lapid, Senator.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we approve proposed Senate Resolution number 861 subject to style.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution 861, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution 871
Mr. President,
is hereby adopted, subject to style.
thank you, Mr. President. I move that all senators present be made co-authors of this measure.
The senators present are made co-authors.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the session to allow the senators to congratulate the awardee and for a photo opportunity with the Senate President.
Session is suspended for 1 minute.
Anak ni Luigi.
I am sure he did not go through your training. Can you move to the other side? Hi. Okay, here. Sige. Anong sunod? Anong sunod?
Jerry.
Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2277 under Committee Report number 51. This is the open high school system, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, the status of the measure is that the sponsor finished the committee amendments yesterday, and we are now in the period of individual amendments. I thus move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Mr. President, upon consultation with the other members of the Senate, there are no there's no member who wants to propose individual amendments. Therefore, I move that we close the period of individual amendments.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the period for individual amendments is hereby terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we approve Senate Bill number 227 under Committee Report number 51 on second reading.
Any objection? Hearing none. Propose a Senate Bill number 2277 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 227 under Committee Report number 51.
Consideration of Senate Bill number 2277 is suspended.
I move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary is directed to read the reference of business.
Reference of business. Resolutions. PS Resolution number 879. Commending businessman and inventor Rogelio Von Santos Jr., designer Buji Layug, and architect Royal Pineda for having initiated the Butterfly House Project, a design-led approach to provide affordable, habitable, durable, and convenient emergency shelters for displaced families in lieu of the traditional tents and bunkhouses, and urging the government to support such good design by creating an environment that values and utilizes Filipino innovation as a problem-solving mechanism by Senator Gingona III.
Committee on Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 880, commending and congratulating Attorney Andrew Michael S. Ong for being appointed as Director of the Regional Bureau of Asia and the Pacific as PAC of the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, by Senator Gingona III.
Rules.
Yes, Resolution number 881, commending the Filipino peacekeepers in Golan Heights for exhibiting courage and bravery amidst grave danger and conflict, showcasing the Philippine spirit of valor and excellence, Senator Gingona III.
Rules.
PS Resolution number 882, directing the Senate Committee on Education, Arts and Culture and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the tragic death of 7 tourism students of Bulacan State University, BSU, while crossing the Madlum River in San Miguel, Bulacan during BSU's educational field trip, with the end in view of assessing the present policies and protocols regarding educational field trips and recommending remedial measures to prevent similar incidents in the future, Senator Pimentel III.
Education, Arts and Culture. With the permission of the Chamber, we suspend the session for 1 minute. Hmm.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 12 under Committee Report number 31. This is the Barangay Workers Bill, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of Senate Bill number 12 under Committee Report 31 is in order.
Mr. President, the status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpellation. I thus move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Marcos.
Senator Marcos is recognized.
To,
Go ahead.
to interpolate, Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Gingona.
To avail of the period of interpellation, Senator Gingona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, will the distinguished gentleman from Ilocos Norte yield to a few questions?
Certainly, Mr. President. Happily to the gentleman from Bukidnon.
At the outset, Mr. President, I would like to express my full support for providing retirement benefits to our hardworking barangay workers who merely receive allowances in return for their dedicated service to the public. That being said, I would like to pose several questions. Section 1 of Senate Bill number 12 provides that a Purum barangay will receive 100,000 retirement benefits. Sangguniang barangay member, 80,000. Barangay treasurer, tanod, member of the Lupon, tagapamayapa, BHW, and a barangay daycare worker, 50,000. Mr. President, how are these amounts reached, and why were these amounts pegged at these amounts? And why is it not that the retirement is not benefit is not the same for all? What accounts for all the difference, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, actually the bottom line answer to this question is the financial capability in terms when we were calculating the total funding that would be required for such a program. It was immediately seen, considering how many, there were 42,000 barangay captains and with the equivalent officers appointed and elected. It would be too large, and that we would not be able to afford it. So that is why we feel that 100,000. In fact, the reason also that they are graduated in terms of the position is a recognition, of course, of the additional functions and responsibilities of the different positions in the barangay and the barangay council. So we try to compensate in the sense that we try to follow some of the other formulae that we see, not only in government but also in the private sector. So that is these are the amounts that we came up with. So that is essentially the reason, is that we felt that we could not put too large a load on the national government for
So,
this
Mr.
program.
President, one of the basis is number one, affordability.
Affordability.
Yes.
Yes. And we can get into the actual numbers later on, but I think if we do, we will see that because of the multiple of 42,000 in terms of barangays, then we will immediately see that the number expands very rapidly.
And the difference in retirement benefits in amount is also based on the responsibility that the officer
That
bears.
was, yes, Mr. President, that was the idea. Again, in recognition of the different functions and responsibilities, certainly if you look at the hierarchy of officers, there are more responsibilities and functions given to the chairman and down the line.
Mr. President, which government agency will manage this barangay retirement fund?
As it is written right now, it is the This is the DILG who will be administering the fund. However, the IRR will be written or be drawn up together with the DBM. So it will be the DBM and the DILG drawing up the IRR, and once the IRR has already been finalized, then the DILG will be following those guidelines that they themselves, together with the DBM, will have drawn up.
Mr. President, wouldn't it be better to give the management of this fund to an institution that has the proven expertise, capabilities to manage such fund? For example, the GSIS. My fear, if we give it to the ILG, we might be giving it to an agency that has no technical capability of managing such fund.
The problem, the question was asked, why was this program not already in place under the GSIS? And the GSIS requirement of 15 years precludes the barangay officials, because even if they stay for 3 terms, of 3 years each, it is 9 years. So they do not qualify. So essentially, they fall. This is one of the main reasons that we I filed this bill, was because they are falling through the cracks. And as those of us who have any experience in local government will attest to, the barangay officials, the barangay workers, including the volunteers, are absolutely critical in the delivery of services to our citizenry. So that is not only in recognition of their importance, but also to actually give some kind of compensation. And that is and since GSIS, they fall through those cracks, then we thought that we have to put a program together specifically to address that problem.
Yes, Mr. President, that is well taken, that they do not qualify under the present GSIS system. What I'm saying is, okay, they don't qualify under the GSIS system, but what I'm saying is, why don't we let this separate fund that we're creating now, why don't we let this separate fund be managed by GSIS as a separate fund, instead of the DILG, whom I don't think has the technical capability of managing such a fund.
Well, one of the reasons for that came up is that technically, barangay officials do not actually receive compensation. Barangay officials only receive honoraria, and so this falls outside the regular function of the GSIS in providing insurance for those government employees who receive a standard salary.
Yes, Mr. President, that is again well taken. But then, if we mandate it under a law, if we tell GSIS that aside from your duties as GSIS, hey, Mr. GSIS, there is this separate fund that you manage. It's a separate fund, Mr. President, that GSIS will manage with a different set of rules in accordance with the mandate that we give them through the law.
The reason DILG was also chosen is that because they actually, I would have to beg to differ with the gentleman from Bukidnon. They in fact already do manage a very similar fund, which is the Death Benefits Fund, to barangay officials who died during their term of office. So this would be just an addition to that function, which would be very similar. And I think despite the additional number of beneficiaries, I think in terms of capability that DILG would be able to carry it out. But if the gentleman would care to introduce that as an amendment, it is certainly something that we would be very happy to discuss.
But now that you brought it up, yes, Mr. President, I do recall now that the DILG does manage that death benefit fund for barangay captains and barangay kagawads. But yes, let's take a closer look at that, and at least I am glad to hear that, Mr. President, that you have no objections to.
No, I'm certainly with what is in our interest is simply that these benefits are given and in the most efficient and timely manner when the time comes for our barangay officials to benefit, to be given their retirement benefit. It's not in. So long as it can be shown that it would be a better system, would not be an additional burden to the national government and its agencies, then I don't see why not, why we shouldn't, at the very least, discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Moving on, Mr. President. There are three instances. Excuse me. There are three instances when a barangay official and worker is entitled to the retirement fund under the bill. First is, let's start with the last, no? First, while in the performance of his and her duty, the person dies or is permanently incapacitated. That's one. Second is when you reach 60 years of age. That's two. And last, it says, with at least 9 years of service. I suppose that the 60 years and the 9 years come together, Mr. President.
There are both requirements.
They're both
That
requirements.
at least 9 years will have been served by the barangay officials, and that they have reached the age of 60.
So if it's 7 years, he reaches 60, but 7 years, he's not qualified.
He is not qualified.
He is not qualified. And Mr. President, is this 9 years cumulative or can this be intermittent?
No, this is not necessarily. It is. I'm sorry. It is cumulative, Mr. President. It is not necessarily in one position either. So let me clarify that. They may come in one position and end up as a barangay chairman and retire as a barangay chairman, and that will be the benefit that will be given them as barangay chairman.
So this is not continuous service.
Not necessarily, Mr. President.
And the retirement pay will be based on the last position?
On the last position, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Calculation, 6 months.
Lastly, Mr. President, will there be... I suppose, Mr. President, there is a repository agency within, I suppose, the DILG that maintains a database of all these barangay and barangay health workers.
Actually, we ran into this problem when this was first filed. The DILG does not maintain such records simply because they don't need them, and they only needed them. The only time that it was asked of them was when we were putting the bill together. Our Senate President, who was then the Chairman of Finance in the last Congress, asked us this question, and we could not answer him because that data is not gathered. However, we have since been able to go back through the records and put the data together, and we do have some data now, and we can that the DILG has provided as to at least who are going to retire in the following year. So we have that data now, so we can put a number to what the funding requirement will be for the program,
including barangay health workers and barangay daycare workers, Mr. President,
including all of the positions that were named here in the bill that we have. So we start with the barangay chairman. We then, together with the barangay members of the barangay council, the secretary and the treasurer, who are the appointed officials of the council. Then we lupon ng tagapamayapa. Then the barangay health. Then the daycare workers. These are the.
As a matter of record, isn't the barangay health workers locally hired, meaning aren't they hired by the local government
Mr.
from
President,
the budget of the local government? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Spahn.
Mr. President, they are considered volunteers and are not hired.
They're given an allowance, by the local government?
It depends on the local government. It is not written down anywhere. They are considered as volunteers, and if the local executive, through the kindness of their own heart, wants to give something to the barangay health workers, that's the only time that they receive something.
So if they are volunteers, there is no record of service.
There will be at the barangay with the barangay level, because the barangay council uses the barangay health workers, for example, for certain programs that they want to implement. And to be able to do that, they have to have a list of those that are available to be volunteer workers for whatever that program it is there to implement. So it is not, these records are not kept. I will admit that those records are a little fluid, because being volunteers, some drop out, some drop back in. So at any one moment, we would have to really look very well at exactly how many there are. But again, if this program is approved, then certainly those records will be then kept much more stringently than they are now, simply because of the requirement, so that the benefits can be given to those that are qualified.
One apprehension that I can see, Mr. President, is once people get wind of this bill, there will be a huge swelling of especially the barangay health workers, itong barangay tanod, what might be
daycare center workers.
Yes, because I understand, Mr. President, that some barangay health workers are hired by the city or municipality, some are hired by the barangay. So it's so easy to pad, so to speak, the list, especially when you know you're going to receive retirement benefits. Baka yung buong barangay maging barangay health worker na, barangay tanod, para lahat.
Well, in conception, we put it in the IRR that there are certain informal formulae that are already being followed as to the population of the barangay for the requirement of barangay health workers. This is something that is done on an informal basis. So in each LGU, let us say, sabihin natin na meron yung sa barangay, ang kanilang families, let us say, is 10,000. On that 10,000, and also with the way that these 10,000 families are distributed around the constituent area, around the barangay, then those are determining factors as to how many barangay health workers, how many. Well, the daycare centers is much easier problem, simply because you can only have so many, depending on how many daycare centers you have. The lupon ng tagapamayapa, the same thing. It's the barangay health workers that we have to pin down the barangay council, and on the basis again of the population that they serve and perhaps the distribution. But again, to keep it simple, maybe population. That is how it's being done informally already at the barangay level. And we hope to include that in the IRR that the DBM and the DILG will draw up, Mr. President.
So what you're saying, Mr. President, is in the IRR you will put a formula, say a certain percentage of the population, let's say arbitrarily 10% of the population will be the ceiling of the number of barangay health workers. Am I correct, Mr. President?
That is the general idea. That is the general idea, so that there's a standardized number per capita in each barangay, and that way we do not go into that spiral that you conceive, that we would just hire everybody and consider them barangay health workers. We anticipated that, because we know that political appointees are something that are abused sometimes.
Okay, Mr. President.
What about the tanods? Is there a listing of the tanods hired, and the dates of their birth, and the length of their service?
Not at the DILG level, Mr. President, but at the barangay level, and I think in certain cases even up to the municipal and provincial level.
How accurate are the records in the barangay level, Mr. Sponsor?
The records are quite accurate, because they have to be, simply because we call on them on a very regular basis to help in fulfilling the functions of the barangay chairman and the council. And so again, that list must be accurate, so that we know what kind of warm bodies we can count on, and all of these kind of requirements. So I am confident that we will be able to consolidate all of that If we go all through the barangays and tell them to present us their lists, they will have those lists, and those lists will be accurate.
And the members of the Lupon, is there also a list certain among the barangay records?
Yes, Mr. President, they do maintain those lists. All of the barangay officials, all of the barangay appointed officials, elected officials, and the appointed officials, and all of these other functionaries under that work at the barangay level are all recorded, and those records maintained at the barangay level at the very least. But I know that in that certain municipalities, cities, and provinces, they maintain it even at that level, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Senator Gigona, for yielding the floor.
Yes, Mr. President, you mentioned that the ceiling, which will be a formula, a percentage of the population, for example, will be placed in the IRR. Wouldn't it be better to put it, for purposes of control, in the law itself rather than the IRR? Since if it's not in the law, then the IRR cannot rise higher than the law. So we have to put it in the law. Your thoughts on this, Mr. President?
Well, I think it is actually this discussion. We had this discussion during the hearings, but it was not the work of the committee to do this, in the sense that it was not going to be the work of one day. That we would have to collate all of the records of the barangay officials all around the country and take from that the exact numbers. And that's why we thought that it did not belong in the law itself, but that the formula did not belong in the law itself, but belonged in the IRR.
Well, okay. We'll take that for now. So those are my only two apprehensions, Mr. President. One would be a huge, fantastic ballooning of the lists once this becomes public. Of course, we take note of the controls, the ceilings that you said, Mr. President, that will be incorporated in the IRR. And secondly, the second apprehension would be who will manage the fund, because I do believe GSIS might be more capable of managing the fund. However, Mr. President, this bill is a worthy cause, especially for those barangay workers who have toiled so many years and yet do it on voluntary basis. So I would like to request that I be a co-author of this bill, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the support of the gentleman from Bukidnon is most welcome. To add to his comments, this certainly is not only a recognition of the importance that we put to our barangay workers, both elected and appointed and volunteer, all be they elected, be they appointed, be they volunteers. I think, again, if there is one thing I learned from my time in local government, it is that if at the level of the barangay the government is not working effectively, then simply the services that the government is providing to our people is not felt by ordinary people, and that is why we think that we should give a better motivation for our barangay health workers, because they are to our barangay workers, because they are, as the expression goes, this is where the rubber meets the road. They are at the front line, and they must be compensated accordingly. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Questions from the chair, and just on Section 3, how much would 1% of the share of the national government be that will constitute the barangay retirement fund?
On the year 2013, it was the calculation is 6 point. How much is it?
What? That's 1% of the share of the national government. I assume this is the share after you deduct the share of the LGUs, or what is the share of the national government?
The national government share which is in 60%, which is the amount of 512 billion for
60% of
60% is the national government share, Mr. President.
60% of the what?
I'm sorry, of the total national collections, from which E-race is calculated. So in the years.
So the 1% of the total collection of national taxes, or 1%
of BIR, BIR collections, Mr. President.
1% of the BIR collection less the share of the LGUs, or the ERA, less the ERA.
No, Mr. President, it is taken from the 60% share of the national government share in BIR collections. So to put it in absolute numbers,
yes,
for
please.
the year 2014, calendar year 2004, base year 2011, the BIR total collection base year 2011 is 924 billion.
924 billion, all right?
Which brings 60% to 512 billion to round down.
512 billion, all right?
So at 512 billion, 1% is 5.123 billion.
5.123 billion, all right. And when you're presumably that is the maximum exposure of the national government.
That would have to be, because at 1%, that is the 1% proposed barangay retirement fund is 5.123, using the past year's calculation.
Let us assume, Mr. Sponsor, that the total claims will exceed 5.123 in a particular year. What happens?
Well, this is something that we would have to take year on year, and probably have to supplement the 1%. As it stands now, the 5.123 billion that was calculated for 2014. When we look at the DILG numbers. When we looked at the DILG numbers as to the total potential retirees, it was already 5.24, if I'm not mistaken. So I am contemplating maybe changing it from the 1% and put into the bill, instead of a flat 1%, the actual number that the DILG can give us every year, to be included in the GAA.
Well, then precisely the concern of Senator Gingona earlier would have to be addressed seriously, because then there is no more limit. In the course of your exchanges with Senator Gingona, Mr. Sponsor, you made of record that there will be a limit. There will be a maximum, and that is the 1%. So the question logically raised is, paano po kung lumagpas ng 1%?
Hindi po, Mr. President. Ang limit na napag-usapan namin ay yung dami ng mga halimbawa, ang kanyang binigay na halimbawa ay yung mga barangay health workers. Baka naman lahat bigla na lang maging barangay health workers. Ang aming pinopropose ay hindi yung limit, hindi doon sa pondo para sa programang ito, kung hindi yung numero, kung ilan ang magiging beneficiary.
But you also precisely placed on the bill 1% of the share of the national government, and you were saying that this is estimated at something like 10% of the population would be covered.
Well, that was just a hypothetical number that Senator Gingona used to illustrate his point. That would again have to be determined, because we have to sift through the voluminous statistics and data and come up with some kind of formula to show what is a reasonable number for a certain population in terms of having volunteers, precisely to make sure that these are not political appointees that are just waiting to retire and collect their benefits.
Anyway, I assume we will put this bill on the floor again at some future date, because there are a few other questions that comes to mind.
I expected that, Mr. President, considering your questions to us in the last Congress. I assure Mr. President that we are prepared to answer all those questions.
Yes. It's a question of whether or not we can provide sufficient funds. At least you have put it in a more reasonable level, which is a fixed amount, which is more where the amounts would be more certain than what it was in the previous Congresses. So.
Well, I think we certainly take note of your comments, Mr. President, and perhaps we should still hew to that original formula. We would have to juggle the numbers around a little bit to make it fit. Not to fudge the numbers, but to make them fit within the 1%. But again, I am certain that the idea that something is better than nothing would apply here, and it would certainly still be an improvement in their situation.
Having a definite or a maximum figure would be more reasonable in order that the national finances are not also exposed to claims that may be beyond the capacity of the national budget to answer, and indeed 1% is a limitation that could be discussed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your observations are certainly well noted, and we will see how we can possibly apply to simplify things. We should possibly apply it to this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Mr. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 12 under Committee Report number 31.
So suspended.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
All my calculations were wrong. I think overall it's down 5.4.
Boss, committee amendments daw muna. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13. This is the chemistry bill, Mr. President.
Any objection, hearing none, consideration of Senate Bill 914 under Committee Report number 13 is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpellation. I thus move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Trillanes.
Principal sponsor, Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, is recognized.
Yes,
Sir-
Mr. President.
Yes,
Mr. President,
Senator
there are
Trillanes.
no other senators who wish to interpellate, so I move that we close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none. The period of interpellation on Senate Bill 914 under Committee Report number 13 is terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments is in order. The sponsor is recognized for any committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 1, section 1, line 1, after the article, delete the phrase chemistry law of 2013 and in lieu thereof replace it with the phrase Chemistry Profession Act of 2014. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Carried.
On the same page, section 2, line 5, delete the word high and in lieu thereof replace with the phrase elevate to. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On the same page, section and line, insert the letter S at the end of the word standard. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
On the same page, section and line between the word standard and preposition of, insert the words the practice. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
On page 12, section 34, from lines 22 to 26, delete the entire paragraph starting from the article A all the way to the word country, and in lieu thereof replace with the following. No foreign chemist shall be given a certificate of registration / professional license and professional identification card or be entitled to any of the privileges under this act unless the country or state of which he is a subject or a citizen permits Filipino chemists to practice within its territorial limits on the same basis as the subjects or citizens of said country or state. End of quote. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
That's all, Mr. President, for the committee amendments.
Majority Leader.
There are no further committee amendments, Mr. President. I move that we close the period of committee amendments.
Committee amendments terminated.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for individual amendments.
Period for individual amendments is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Soto, to
Senator
propose
Soto is
amendments.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the Majority Leader. Will the distinguished gentleman yield to some individual amendments?
I'd be honored, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I start on page 2, section 3D, lines 4 to 5. delete the entire sentence starting from the word chemical on line 4 up to the word techniques and replace it with the following sentence. Physico-chemical or biochemical technique shall refer to the following and its related techniques.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Soto amendment is accepted and therefore carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, again, section 3, F, line 28. Between the words facility and where, insert the phrase headed by a registered chemist.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Soto amendment having been accepted. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the same, on page 5. Page 5. Section 7, line 9. Insert a space between the words. No, I'm sorry. On the page 5, section 7, line 12. Line 12. After the word chemical, replace capital T with a smaller t in the word technicians.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On page 10, section 24, line 17, page 10, after the word unless, add the word they.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 12, Mr. President, section 30, lines 1 to 3, delete the whole section and replace it with the following. Section 30, Integration of Chemistry Profession. The chemistry profession shall be integrated into one, in words and numbers, national professional organization of chemists and chemical technicians that is duly registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. The board, subject to approval by the Commission, shall accredit the said organization as the one and only integrated and APO of registered chemists and chemical technicians. All chemists and chemical technicians whose names appear in the registry book of chemists and chemical technicians shall ipso facto or automatically become members thereof, and shall receive all the benefits and privileges appurtenant thereto upon payment of APO membership fees and dues. Membership in Membership in the integrated APO shall not be a bar to membership in other chemistry organizations. The rationale, Mr. President, is that the original Section 30 is limited only to the required membership of chemistry professionals to APO, accredited professional organizations. So the crafting of this new provision expands such requirement by way of integrating all existing organizations of chemistry professions.
Yes. Mr. President, this sponsor has consulted the resource persons and they are amenable to the proposed amendment by the minority leader. Therefore, accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Soto amendment having been accepted by the sponsor, the same is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 12, still on page 12, all the way to page 13, section 35, from line 34 to line 1 of the next page, delete the phrase has charge and replace it with is in charge.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 14, section 42, at the end of the paragraph.
Section?
At section 42, page 14, Mr. President. At the end of the paragraph, add the sentence, registered chemists and registered chemical technicians who face civil or criminal suits arising from work done in good faith are entitled to legal assistance to be provided by the employer / laboratory for whom the work was performed. This is under hazard pay and insurance, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection, Honorable?
On page 15, line 12, Mr. President, at the end of the word complete, insert the letter D. So in the past tense, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Approved.
On the same page, section and line, insert a space between the words chemistry and which.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Yes.
Approved.
Now, we propose omnibus amendments, Mr. President. Every time the phrase continuing professional education, CPE, appears in the bill, delete the same and replace it with the phrase continuing professional development, CPD.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection, Honorable?
And finally, Mr. President, every time the words chemical analysis appears in the bill, delete the same and replace it with the word chemical technician, except for those found in page 2, section 3D, lines 4, page 3, section 4, lines 5 and 6, and page 4, section 5, line 1. This is was consulted with the sponsor, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if we are going to close the period of individual amendments and approve it on second reading, I would just like to suggest that it be approved subject to style, because there are some commas and periods that have not been, that I did not go through or anymore, Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader, would there be any harm if we have a clean copy done first and have a clean copy approved on second reading instead of having it approved?
Mr. President, upon consultation with both the author, sponsor, and with the Senate Minority Leader, we'll have a clean copy on Monday, then vote on second reading, just so that all of these punctuation marks can make a difference in the interpretation of the law. So we will just go through it and have a clean copy, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. Once again, I'd like to thank the Minority Leader for further refining and improving the bill.
Maybe, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. Sponsor, you may wish to look at the title of the bill and make it more, make sure that it reflects the contents of the bill. Including the repealing clause in the title of the bill is not usually done. You have a repealing clause usually in section 50 on page 16, which repeals expressly 754. The chair may would ask the Majority Leader and the sponsor to take a look at the bill, the title of the bill only.
With the concurrence of the sponsor, Mr. President, we will work on the bill, and I will be willing to adapt as my personal amendments, since we are still in the period of individual amendments. If we have already concluded the committee amendments, if there are any changes to be made on Monday.
Maybe we can just shorten the title and simply say an act to regulate and modernize the practice of chemistry in the Philippines and for other purposes.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may I move that as articulated by the Senate President, the title be amended.
All right. If there are no objections, the title of the measure is amended as proposed. So we prepare a clean
may
copy.
I congratulate the sponsor, a good soldier, gentleman, Senator, Graftbuster, Interior Designer, and Resident Chemist, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 914 under Committee Report number 13.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure be suspended. Tama yun, Queenie. Ha? Wala namang title ng bill na sa repealing for this purpose. Ha? May repealing. The title is regulated.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 8, 2014.
Any objection? Hearing none. Session is adjourned until 3 p.m. of Monday, September 8, 2014.